All right, guys, what is up? So, man, what a week, what a couple weeks it's been in college football. Realignment, one of my favorite topics. Sad, but at the same time, it's also very exciting, especially on social media, message boards, all that kind of stuff. Normally lets you know you're getting close to the season. And wow, man, this has been an absolute doozy. Um, uh, where to start? Man, I want to take it all the way back. So, realignment's not something that's new, as everybody knows. It's been going on for years. You can start at any time period and see it. Get back to '92 when the SEC, ACC, I believe that's when the Big Eight went to the Big 12 and all that good stuff. So going all the way back to there, I mean, it's always been a part of college football, but man, just dating back in the 2000s, the ACC expanded, and we thought it was going to be a home run. You get Miami, who had 5 national championships at that point. Uh, you get a Boston College team that was solid, not anything great, nothing too special. And of course, a Virginia Tech team that had just recently played for a national championship against an ACC team in Florida State. ACC looked like they were great position, and man, look at us now. I mean, that was seems like a lifetime ago. Who would have known that? I mean, Virginia Tech held their I guess part of the pie up. They won the ACC multiple times, made it to all those BCS bowls. And as far as that goes, they did their part. They fell off, of course, but it is what it is. And then, of course, moving to the more recent, you go back to when the Pac 12 stole from the Big 12 and the ACC helped finish off the Big East. And that was the last major realignment. And man, I made a video back in 2012. If you guys remember, man, the ACC was on the verge of falling apart then. The Big East did collapse. That was the last full collapse we had. Of course, they transformed into the AAC, but it was very similar to what we've got going on now with the ACC then. And of course, replace the Big East with the Pac 12. But back then, everybody rated the Big East, took the big brands. Clemson took a bunch of them after rating the Big East years earlier when they took Miami and all those guys. But man, Florida State was the vocal party back then too. If you look back and look at articles and everything, Florida State was saying a lot of the same stuff. Now, it wasn't as intense as it is right now, but they were saying a lot of the same stuff back then, and Clemson was very close to joining the Big 12 with Florida State, according to what people and reports were saying. And man, that could have absolutely changed the landscape like crazy. I mean, imagine if Clemson and Florida State and Oklahoma and Texas were all still in the Big 12. Big 12 probably wouldn't have fallen apart, probably would have gotten a better TV deal and would be sitting at potentially 16 teams, including those 4 big programs. Clemson likely would have still gone on a run. I don't know if it would have been exactly the same with 2 national championships, but they would have still gone on a major run most likely back then. So it's just crazy, man. Realignment is just so much about luck and just luck of the draw, really. You have to be very proactive as well, which the ACC was back then, not as much now, as you guys can all see. But man, just looking into the last couple of years, it all started with Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC, and then you had last year UCLA and USC going to the leaving the Pac-12 for the Big Ten, which was just a lot weirder. That's where things were really starting to make you think, okay, maybe we are going to the super conferences because the geography just obviously does not make sense. We felt like there's definitely going to be some other teams to follow that are going to be closer, surely, and things are going to go downhill pretty quick. And of course, after that, things were quiet last year. We didn't really have anything that happened major after that. Now everybody was still saying expect it to happen this year. Every year we're going to have realignment until we get to those super conferences. And sure enough, recently, end of July, it starts with Colorado and Dion heading from the Pac 12 back to home in the Big 12 conference. They probably should have never left. They've lost money. They would have made more money had they stayed in the Big 12 than if they had gone to the Pac 12. So I will say that's the first move that has like geography from a geography standpoint and just from a money standpoint. Um, and old rivals and everything. That's the only move that's actually really made sense since all this started. If you're just taking money out of it, but so that happens, and we said it last year when USC and UCLA left. Pac-12's on the verge, and here we are. Here we are. This week's just been absolute chaos. Uh, we're looking. I mean, let's just go through what's going on because there's so much going on out there. Some of it is rumors. A lot of it is legit. So we'll start with the Pac-12 and move our way into the ACC with Clemson and Florida State because it's all kind of tied together along with the Big 12. So looking at the Pac-12, the rumor is right now that, and it's a strong rumor. I mean, it's almost official that at the very least Arizona is going to leave, and then you most likely have Arizona State and potentially another California team, or yeah, probably a California team because I don't think Washington and Oregon are going to go over there. So you've got most likely those teams leaving the Pac-12, which would knock them down to, I believe, most likely 6 teams, right? And then a lot of people came out, man, just within the last couple of hours talking about Oregon and Washington now in serious. It sounds like they're in serious talks again with the Big Ten. Big Ten was waiting for the Pac-12 to start to implode. They want the Big 12 to make the first move. We're going to see if it happens. Um, it's pretty much just a matter of when and not if at this point. I mean, Arizona is probably going to the Big 12 this week. I mean, it could happen as soon as tomorrow. I mean, almost 100%. So then that is going to really start the dominoes falling. The Pac-12 has no chance, man. What a joke! What a joke their whole media package was. I hate it. I've always liked watching the Pac-12 as a night owl. It was a lot of fun watching the Pac-12, but it is what it is. You know, unfortunately, West Coast fans outside of Oregon, Washington, and when USC is good, don't care about college football. The other outside of Washington and Oregon, and Oregon State and Washington do pack their stadiums, but obviously much smaller stadiums. Outside of those states, I mean, college football normally is an afterthought, and so the fact that they were trying to go streaming with packages is it. They already tried it with the Pac-12 network, and nobody wanted the Pac-12 network. So just absolute disaster all the way around. You just got to sit back and laugh because, man, eh, these guys are paid millions to do this kind of stuff, and it just does not make any sense. They should have known better. I don't think they had another option. I think the Pac-12 did try everything they possibly could to get at least a TV network to pick them up, even if it was the CW. I mean, anything to stay on TV. But unfortunately, it just didn't happen for them. And Apple TV streaming packages with Lord, I mean, nobody knows how much that was going to be. Unfortunately, that is what they had at the end, which sounds like it would have been base around 20 million a year, and you'd have to have some crazy subscription numbers to get up anywhere near what the Big 12 is going to pay. So unless, I mean, it would take an absolute miracle. I mean, miracle on ice type stuff, even more than that for the Pac-12 to survive into next year. So what does that do? Well, that adds on to the Big 12, kills the Pac-12. Big 12, who knows how many teams they're going to take. And then once that happens, you see the Big 10 come and take Oregon and Washington, and then boom, where's the Big 10 at? Instead of 16 teams, they're the first conference to go to 18. And then once you get to 18, man, it's just who knows? Who knows? At that point, it's just we're going to get like Premier League and 24 team conferences. And of course, once that happens, that's when the ACC, Clemson and Florida State got to get out, got to do whatever you can to get out. Florida State's come out just like in 2012. They've been the vocal ones, and kudos to them. The ACC deserves everything it gets. There's teams that I feel bad for. Wake Forest, they really do spend a lot of money on football, and for the size of their school, man, they are the best bang for your buck from the size of a school. Wake Forest being a consistent bowl team, consistent 8 and 9 win team the last few years, up to a decade. Man, they've tried and they've done everything they possibly can. So hey, props to them, but it's just not going to help. So that just kind of once that happens there, and the Big Ten gets to 18 teams and all that kind of stuff happens, which is going to happen sooner rather than later. Uh, it's just a waiting game to see. The board of trustees at Florida State is not too worried about this payout, which it's interesting because there's been a lot of research. There's been a lot of stuff that I think that a lot of people have, even like beat writers and stuff, have been able to get a good insight on it. And I don't see how they're. I mean, they know stuff we don't know, but the ACC, it may survive another 3, 4 years. I don't think anything's going to happen this year. Uh, that each year that money comes down. I'm sure that's something they're probably considering. But this year, yeah, yeah, Luke, we're stuck here this year, most likely. I mean, no doubt about that. But you know, 2030, Clemson's not going to be in the ACC. Florida State's not going to be in the ACC. It's probably going to happen a lot sooner than that. And how we get there, that's what everybody just is kind of waiting to see. Uh, so as far as that goes, we'll see. Florida State, people are saying they're possibly going to come out here and say something about leaving before the deadline, August 15th. I don't see it. They're going to probably make some more remarks like this, but it's probably not going to happen. So, what it could look like, I mean, when the Big Ten starts adding, as of right now, the Big Ten is looking like they're just going to go West Coast right now. And the rumor all week, the many rumors going around, Clemson and Florida State to the Big Ten. Uh, Personally, I don't. If I had to choose between the ACC and the Big Ten, I'd take the Big Ten from money, exposure. It's more fun road trips. I mean, it might be freezing up there. It's more fun road trips, but there's no traditional rivalries other than Maryland, who we just kick the crap out of every year. Ohio State, who, when it's not a COVID year, we kick the crap out of every time we play them. Still would be very fun. I mean, yeah, it'd be fun to play Penn State, sure, but Clemson does not have anything in common with most of those Big Ten schools. They have a little bit in common with Ohio State and Penn State, but you go further up than that, even Michigan, not really. The culture is very different. The SEC is obviously where Clemson wants to go. It's where I obviously prefer to go. I've been trying, nothing I can do about it, but I've been wanting to get out of the ACC for years. And I just, man, looking back, if Clemson and Florida State had just manned up in 1992 when they had a chance to go to the SEC, Clemson and Florida State would have been in the SEC for 30 years, while South Carolina and Arkansas would be sitting in the ACC or AAC. Um, but you look at the SEC, it's obviously going to be much tougher to win than the Big Ten. I mean, just being honest, what has the Big Ten done? Big Ten is right there with the Pac-12 in the revenue sports when it comes to winning championships. You got one or two titles since 2000, both Ohio State. Um, I mean, what are you going to do? You think that that's going to? There's a lot. It's hilarious watching the Big Ten trash talk Clemson. I mean, guys, if Clemson had been in the Big Ten the last 10 years, we probably have maybe not as many conference championships. We still have two national championships. I mean, come on. The SEC is obviously going to be much tougher if that's where Clemson ultimately ends up, but it's a culture fit. Clemson and Florida State are both SEC teams playing in the ACC. Uh, there's natural rivalries. Clemson has South Carolina, obviously, and Georgia and Clemson are the Georgia and Clemson. I say this all the time. Georgia is the closest Power Five school to Clemson, and Clemson is the closest Power Five school to Georgia outside of Georgia Tech. But I mean, outside of the state. So that rivalry's been going on for 100 years plus. And then the other big rivalry that people don't think about as far as matchups goes with Clemson is Auburn. So Clemson and Auburn have met over 50 times. So those natural rivalries there. Obviously, it'd be a lot of fun to play whoever would be our cross rivals. I'd imagine maybe Georgia and South Carolina and somebody else. Be fun to play Tennessee. Love to go to the Swamp. Love to go to the other Death Valley over there. Um, road trips are more fun. Culture fits in much better, without a doubt. I mean, it's not even close where we'd rather go. Either better than the ACC, but it's not even close to where we'd rather go. And the other thing about it is, look at the non-revenue sports that are popular at Clemson. softball, baseball, and to a lesser extent, soccer. That I know the SEC doesn't have soccer, but a lot of their teams do play and are pretty good. But man, baseball and softball, you go to the SEC, man, recruiting is gonna take a massive dive, because I mean, who's going to be worth anything up there? And you got to go play in the cold in front of 200 fans instead of 12,000, 15,000 fans in the SEC. The conference is the premier baseball conference with the ACC behind it. Um, so that's another big kicker there. They got hockey up there. Um, so that's just another thing, just another part there. I mean, I would be absolutely ecstatic if we joined the SEC. Now, you ain't gonna see me chanting SEC or anything like that unless they're playing Ohio State. But it just would be the rivalries would be so much fun. The rivalries that would form, man, it's exciting just to think about. But does the ACC want Clemson? That's another big point that everybody's been talking about. So the Big Ten logically would absolutely want Clemson and Florida State because of recruiting. And you get into the South, Clemson's very close to Georgia. A lot of Clemson's recruits are from Georgia, and the heart of recruiting in Georgia is the Atlanta area, which is an hour and a half drive from Clemson. So, everybody, all the family can make drive over there. Um, to watch them play if a Big Ten team comes down to Clemson and they get out of Georgia, out of North Carolina. Florida will have Florida State, another major recruiting state for Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, all the teams who want to be relevant. So just from a recruiting standpoint, from an exposure standpoint, and from teams that actually, unlike the Big Ten, actually win national championships, gaining Clemson and Florida State would be massive, massive, massive for the Big Ten. But again, on the flip side for Clemson and Florida State, you're getting the money, everything else, including recruiting. That's another thing I didn't even point out. Man, recruiting in the SEC for Clemson and Florida State would obviously pick up if they join the SEC. It's going to absolutely pick up. That's one thing that pretty much every SEC team uses against Clemson and Florida State is the fact that you come here, you play in the SEC. You go there, you got to play against, Syracuse and Boston College. So if Clemson's in the SEC, recruiting even better than now. If it's in the Big Ten, it's going to be tougher to get these Southern kids because instead of playing in Georgia and in Atlanta, instead of playing in North Carolina, instead of playing multiple teams in Florida, now you're playing teams in Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, New Jersey. Uh, man, that could seriously hurt Clemson's recruiting. Might be getting money. Recruiting's going to probably go down a little bit. So, yeah, without a doubt, SEC. I mean, it's not even close. So we just have to see if the SEC wants to keep the Big Ten from getting the West Coast, the East Coast, the South, the North, being an all around the country conference. If they can land Clemson and Florida State in the future on top of Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA, and maybe they take North Carolina, NC State, Miami, whoever it may be, Georgia Tech, throw whatever other ACC teams in there, then the Big Ten's probably going to have not only a bigger deal, because they already have a bigger deal per school and TV wise, they're probably going to have a good bit bigger deal than the SEC come next negotiations. Obviously, if that happens, Fox is going to have the main media rights. I think it was Fox and who was it? NBC. I can't remember who else the Big Ten signed with, but yeah, you're going to have with that the best teams on the West Coast, two really good national championship caliber teams, plus some other Southern teams. You've got all the other Big 10 teams who already generate a ton of money. Man, that would be the SEC does not want that to happen. That's really Clemson and Florida State's only hope to get into the SEC eventually is trying to keep the Big 10 from having all those pieces. Keep the Big 10 out of the South because if they can keep the Big 10 away from Clemson and Florida State, I know Miami's won those national championships back in the 80s and 2001 and stuff, but if you get Clemson and Florida State, you have out of all the teams left that aren't already in the Big Ten or SEC, that's the cream of the crop. You've got everybody left. There's nobody else available who's really national championship contenders that you could go after. The Big Ten will have national championship contenders in every corner of the country. So the SEC, if they can lock down the Southeast by getting Clemson and Florida State, at least they'll have that area down there. The Southeast where college football is king, where you get the most viewers. Is going to be solidly locked into the SEC. You've got every recent national champion. You've got pretty much, man, if Clemson and Florida State joined the SEC, I believe, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but with the addition of Oklahoma and Texas, if they were to get them, they would have every single national champion since 2000 except for Ohio State and Ohio State and USC. So 3 titles, I think, in that whole stretch, because Texas obviously would be in the SEC too. So, man, you got all those champions. The Big Ten's just got 2 teams that have won it, and they're the other power team. So that's where it kind of comes into play. And I think that is a big point for the SEC. If the Big Ten goes ahead and moves to 18 with getting those West Coast teams, I think it absolutely would be worth the SEC to lock down the Southern market. And I mean, just to be honest, if Florida State keeps up, stays good. If Clemson keeps up and stays good, the TV ratings are going to be bonkers, and they're going to be better. Your TV ratings for Clemson or Florida State versus any decent SEC team is going to be better than whatever USC and UCLA can put up against even the best of the Big Ten. TV ratings are going to be much better as far as that goes, unless maybe Ohio State or Michigan's playing. So if you can lock down the South, lock down those teams, create better matchups. I don't know who else the SEC would take. You have a good feeling about the Big Ten. Obviously, I think the SEC would jump into North Carolina, take the Tar Heels. Duke's kind of a wild card since their football is pretty much another Vandy as far as fan support, stadium size, all that kind of stuff. I don't see Duke joining the SEC. NC State's kind of a wild card just because of they've never really done anything, and they don't really commit to football, which is stupid. And Dave Dorian's down there getting 3 stars out the wazoo, and the NC State Board of Trustees is fine with it. So it is what it is. It'll be interesting to see. Probably try to get Virginia or Virginia Tech, although I could see the Big Ten trying to get that. So all that to say, man, it's going to be very interesting. I'm nervous. I do think that Clemson will end up in either the Big Ten or the SEC, almost 100% within the next 5 years. Still a little nervous about it, the way everything could play out, all that kind of stuff, buyouts, all that. But if I was anybody besides Clemson and Florida State, I'd be terrified right now in the ACC. The Pac-12 is already terrified. They, especially the poor teams like Oregon State and Washington State, who have no landing spot, they're going to go to Group of 5. You got teams like Vandy who just lucked out, teams like Northwestern that just lucked out, that don't belong in these new super conferences. So it's going to be super interesting to see. The timeline is what's really going to kind of stress everybody out, man. It could be a very annoying waiting game. Hash Brown, good to see you, bud. Yep, I'll try to make. I always say it. I'm gonna try to make more videos this year. I hope it's going to be a great year for the Tigers. Going to try to get some more live streams out later this season and into the season. But yeah, as far as this timeline goes, man, I'm a very impatient person. I want everything to happen now. I want to get this out of the way with so we can talk about it, so we can plan for it, see the matchups and all that kind of stuff. And unfortunately, there's a small chance that something could happen within the next few weeks, but most likely you're looking at the very earliest being next summer to 2 summers from now. I do think by that point, something's definitely going to happen. The way Florida State's talking could potentially happen sooner. I still think it would probably be next year before that happens. Um, I do think the Pac-12 is going to implode this week or next week. So that could, if the Big Ten goes ahead and moves, I think that's what's going to kind of really get the ball moving, especially with the 12-team playoff starting. If the Big Ten goes ahead after these additions are taken from whatever the Big 12 takes from the Pac 12. If the Big 10 goes ahead and attacks and takes Washington and Oregon, then I think it's open season. Then we could see anything happen. It's very tough because of this deal. Uh, I shared on Twitter yesterday. If you watched the Board of Trustees meeting, the interviews and stuff from Florida State, it was very interesting because it really boosted my confidence in Clemson leaving the SEC, just or leaving the ACC for the SEC or Big Ten, just based on what they were saying. Because obviously, we know there's been a lot of details leaked about the grant of rights, as well as the just the buyout from the ACC itself, and it's substantial. I mean, it's a ton. It's very expensive. It's going to be very tough to overcome. But Florida State's all their board of trustees. I mean, this wasn't just this was the president, the board of trustees after their meeting today. They're all talking like it ain't a big deal. Now, I don't know what that means. I don't know what kind of financial hit that means. Florida State's out there buying charter jets today. So I don't know what that's going to look like. But they're saying it's not going to be a big deal. And Clemson, at least lately, Clemson's done everything hire wise all around very quietly. Came out and no fans even knew anything about Garrett Riley until the day it happened. So maybe hopefully, Clemson's just as active as Florida State is right now. I'm confident they are. If Florida State does make a move, I could see Clemson coming right there with them. I do think whatever Florida State does, Clemson is going to do, assuming they both have invites from whatever conference that is. So I'm hoping it happens this year just so we can get it out of the way with, but just not hopeful. Florida State didn't. Some of them said they want to have a plan in place within the next 12 months. I don't know if that means they go ahead and let the ACC know now they're leaving and then try to work things out on the back end like San Diego State tried to do. It didn't work out for them too much. So maybe not. But at least with that said, if not by August 15th this year, you're thinking, yeah, definitely next summer, Florida State's going to be leaving the ACC, which would mean hopefully Clemson is too. And it really just changes day by day. I'm telling you, you get on Twitter and I mean, there's a lot of BS on there. Like, man, this Greg Swaim, I've been following him since the realignment stuff because he was breaking, Clemson, Florida State definitely going to Big 12, all that kind of stuff. He kind of just spits out a ton of different random stuff and hopes some stuff sticks, which every now and then it does. But unfortunately, he has a pretty bad track record when it comes to his guesstimates on stuff like that. Right now he's talking about Texas A&M leaving the SEC. It's just crazy, crazy stuff. But just the way that now these national beat writers are talking about Florida State and Clemson, and they've already announced the Big Ten is officially looking at Pac-12 teams. I mean, we're starting to move here, folks. We're starting to move here more and faster than I thought it would happen. It could be a very interesting rest of the week. It could be a very interesting next couple of weeks as we get into that August 15th deadline for the ACC. And I'm not sure what it is for the Big 12, if they have one, probably similar. Could be very interesting. Like I said, Arizona could announce as soon as tomorrow until Clemson has a meeting with their board of trustees and that they schedule. I don't think we should be even slightly excited. I do expect that to probably happen at some point, at least to talk about the same type of stuff that Florida State did today. That's very interesting stuff. If y'all haven't watched the Florida State interviews and the Florida State Board of Trustees stuff, go watch it because it's going to kind of give you a better understanding to where they're at. And wherever they're at is where Clemson's at. So I would definitely go check that out. And man, you kind of hope it happens quicker and we can get this out of the way with and get focused on the season because, man, Clemson's got a great team this year, and we are without a doubt, college football playoff contender, which Florida State is right up there too. So there's definitely a big distraction there. Hopefully, whatever happens will happen early next week, the end of this week, something like that, so we can really get focused on this season and get ready to hopefully try to get another ACC championship and finally get back to the college football playoff after a 2 year hiatus. I think I'll get into it later, but I think with Garrett Riley, the few things, I mean, y'all forget, we were literally a muffed punt return, most likely away from going to the college football playoff last year with all the holes we had last year. So this year, with much better quarterback play, Tigers should, if they play the way they should be able to with Garrett Riley, should be a college football playoff lock. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes, and just take it one day at a time. Obviously, if anything happens, if we have some news of Florida State or Clemson leaving, we'll get back on here. We'll talk about it. We'll see what's going on. But as for right now, the way it stands, I expect Pac-12 to be dead by college football season start. They'll be down to 6 or 4 teams by then. And I expect there's a small chance Florida State's going to announce something else. They might announce that they're leaving the ACC. Still unlikely, but I would look for next summer to be the big summer as far as the ACC falling apart. But like I said, if the Big Ten goes ahead and moves to 18 teams this summer, within the next couple of weeks, that all could change. Don't see that happening yet either, but man, it's going to be fun. Whichever way it goes, Clemson should be in good hands. We hope it's SEC and not Big Ten, but anything's better than the ACC right now. We'll take whatever we can get. So let's get after it. Let's get this college football playoff appearance in. Let's get back to the national championship and let things take care of themselves.